Good evening, everybody. I'm William Villalongo, Associate Professor at the Cooper Union School of Art, and it's my pleasure to welcome to our historic Great Hall, all of you. The Cooper Union is among the very best colleges in the nation for students pursuing degrees in architecture, art, and engineering. Since its founding in 1859 by Peter Cooper, this institution has been guided by the belief that democracy can only thrive when all its citizens, regardless of race, gender, class, or religion, are provided the opportunity to discover their potential. That educational promise is exemplified by the influence and creative achievements of our alumni, especially those who carry it forward through their own work. Which brings me to the remarkable story we're here to celebrate tonight. A century ago, a young artist from a small town in Florida walked this stage to receive her diploma at a time when many other art schools excluded women of color. Despite the challenges she faced, Augusta Savage would go on to become an internationally accomplished sculptor, part of the Harlem Renaissance, the first director of the Harlem Community Art Center, the first Black woman elected to the National Association of Women Painters and Sculptors, and an inspiring teacher who saw in Black youth the same tremendous potential she fought to realize in herself. Last October, the Cooper proudly hosted the third Augusta Savage Colloquium, which brought together all art practitioners and historians to honor her legacy as one of America's greatest sculptors. As you'll learn during this evening's program, it's a legacy that had been largely erased and imperiled for decades. Today, artists and scholars, including Cooper Union faculty and alumni, as well as our friends at the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture, are introducing new audiences to Augusta Savage's far-reaching significance as a sculptor, gallerist, activist, and educator. The documentary we'll see in just a moment, part of the PBS American Masters short series, is an exciting contribution to restoring Savage's legacy and recognizing her importance. We're thrilled to be joined tonight by the film's creators, Charlotte Mangin and Sandy Rattley of Audacious Women Productions. They were the 2020 recipient of the Eva Holler Woman Transforming Media Award, which recognized their work on Unladylike 2020, a series of short films and an hour documentary that premiered on PBS for the Centennial Women's Suffrage. Charlotte and Sandy are champions of unsung women who have influenced the course of American history. We also have with us Jeffreen M. who is the curator of the exhibition Augusta Savage, Renaissance Woman, and serves as host and narrator of the documentary, and Tammi Lawson, who is a curator of the Arts and Artifacts Division at the Schomburg Center and is also featured in the film. We're so grateful to have all of them here for a conversation after the screening and to be honoring Augusta Savage in the Great Hall, her alma mater. I also want to thank the Robert David Lyon Gardiner Foundation for sharing our vision for celebrating the history of Cooper Union's Great Hall and making free public programming like this possible. Thank you all for being here, and now please join me in welcoming Sandy Rattley, who will introduce tonight's film.
Hello, hello, hello. It is such a privilege and honor to be here, to be standing on the same stage where Augusta Savage got her degree from the College of Art in 1925. And it's been a divine privilege to really tell her story. We, as part of the filmmaking process, went to her home for the last 20 years of her life in Socrates, New York, and sat in her kitchen. And we visited numerous locations in Harlem, New York, where she established institutions and also lived. So now standing on the same stage where she graduated and possibly took her entrance exam is kind of giving me the chills. I have a couple of people I just want to thank before I introduce the film. Of course, the Gardiner Foundation Great Hall series. It's amazing that Cooper Union and the Gardiner Hall Foundation Great Hall Series invited us tonight, and my co-producer, co-executive director, co-writer, Charlotte and I are extremely pleased to be here and to be honored in this way. We really want to thank Kim Newman and her team here at Cooper Union and the Public Programs Department for also welcoming us and making everything extremely easy. Big thanks to Jeffreen M, who's the narrator and the host in our film, and to Tammi Lawson. Both of them are now movie stars. They're just, kind of beyond our reach. Also to Denise Merrill, who is a curator at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, who's also featured in the film. We'd like to thank American Masters Shorts, as Will mentioned, who is the distributor of this film, and also our funders, Humanities New York, NEA, Black Public Media, and again, American Masters, and the generous donations of a few very generous individuals. Just want to tell you that PBS and American Masters Shorts, we were the lead film in this new series, American Masters Shorts. So this film was distributed digitally and is available online. It was distributed on February 15th for Black History Month, and it can be accessed on the American Masters website as well as PBS. But what you're about to watch tonight is what Charlotte and I have developed as the director's cut. So you're seeing a version of the film that is different than the film that PBS is distributing. It has a bonus scene at the end because we went to Green Cove Springs, Florida, to Augusta Savage's hometown. And we did that very late in the production process, and so we're going to share that scene with you. It is just, as I said, such an honor to be able to represent the life of this woman who was just such a waymaker, as Tammi describes her in the film. But one of the things that I think has really marked Charlotte and I in terms of our experience of kind of feeling like we know her now. We really know Augusta Savage. We've been in places where she lived and worked, and once you kind of tell these stories, we've created a career around telling the stories of women history makers whose stories are lost or unknown. And we feel like she was really guiding us in telling her story. And it's a story of resilience, it's a story of amazing courage, and it's a story that many parts of it, even though she was very active in the Harlem Renaissance in the 1920s and 30s and continued to create art, to teach children, and also to advocate for Black artists until the end of her life. Many of the ideas that she championed are still really alive and are still really vital today, especially the underrepresentation of Black women's art within the art landscape. So we thank Augusta Savage for her example and for bringing that critical issue to light. So welcome to this screening of Searching for Augusta Savage. We hope that you all really enjoy it. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
Augusta Savage was a waymaker. She was an artist advocate, an artist educator, and an activist.
The way that she was navigating her career, I began to really think about her as a race woman, putting the Black body and the Black experience at the center, creating a deeper understanding of race in daily life.
Augusta Savage was very much in tune with everyday people, and she made works of everyday people.
Which work speaks to you the most?
Well, I have to say Gammon. That was my first encounter with her work. A sweet little boy with his cap on. He was contemporary and definitely Black. For me, I could tell when an artist loves me by what they create. When they're speaking to me, and they recognize Blackness in a beautiful way. And, you know, for 1929, for her to leave that for us. So I love that work.
So it's a great opportunity to be here with my co-creator, Charlotte, and Jeffreen, who played a really major role in some of our creative and editorial decisions, as well as Tammi. So as I said, Tammi and Jeffreen are now well on their way to movie careers, and we're grateful to have started that process. So Charlotte, let me start by asking you to can you describe our style? So we have a specific, as Audacious Women Productions, we have a specific style of storytelling. How would you describe the art direction of Searching for Augusta Savage?
Sure, absolutely. So nice to be here. Thank you all. We started with Unladylike 2020 a few years ago, a series of 26 shorts about women from the women's suffrage era, combining interviews with historians and biographers, original artwork and animation, archival imagery, in this very fast-paced style that also connects the past to the present. And with Augusta Savage, we sort of took a new step in that we wanted it to be a more immersive experience, so really creating this sense of a search. And that's how, after we met Jeffreen, we thought she could be our guide, having curated an exhibition about Augusta, that she could be our guide to try to understand why artwork is missing, where is it, and why are the locations where Augusta achieved and created all of these institutions not memorialized. We once again used animation from a different artist this time to really try to bring the story of her childhood, which had no archive. The first 29 years of her life don't exist in the archival records, as well as the erasure of Lift Every Voice and Sing to Life through 3D animation.
In our commitment to tell stories of women history makers, especially BIPOC women, one of the things that we've experienced is that oftentimes the archive does not exist. The documentation does not exist. So we had to be creative in order to tell the first 29 years of Augusta Savage's story. But her story was so rich that this was a 23-minute film, and it could have been much, much longer, because there are aspects of her life that we were not able to include. So, for example, all of you, what are some of the things that you wished we had been able to cover?
I guess I'll start, because she deserves a feature-length film, for sure. A lot of the pre-existing coverage about her was really focused on the hurdles in her path that she overcame, and we decided to take a more inspiring approach to all the achievements that she made. But there's definitely a number of struggles that we left out of her story. For instance, she was a Black nationalist. She was very close to Marcus Garvey's organization, the UNIA, the United Negro
Improvement.
Thank you. Improvement Association. Sorry to freeze up. And in fact, her third of 3 husbands was one of the UNIA leaders. And because of that, she was followed by the FBI, and there's a few pages of her FBI files available at the Schomburg's Manuscripts Division, but most of it is blacked out, so it was hard to know what they were accusing her of or following her for. In addition, in the early years when she moved to New York, she encountered this man named Joe Gould, who was someone who was in and out of mental institutions his whole life and became obsessed with her. At various points tried to marry her, stalked her, potentially may have even attacked her physically. She never felt that she could go to the police as a black woman about that, but it may have been one of the factors that led her to move to Saugerties in the last 20 years of her life. And there's a book written by a Harvard professor named Jill Lepore that's about the story of Joe Gould, and she herself says doing her research, it turns out Augusta Savage really became the heroine of Joe Gould's story. And Tammi often talks about how the sexism and racism she faced was compounded by jealousy on the part of her peers, which is something we didn't get into in the film, but if you want to tell some of the stories of the letters that you have in your artist file around the jealousy that she may have experienced.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of meat and a lot of things that could be shared about Augusta Savage, but I just want to talk about something positive about her. As you could see, or the photo that was presented with all the teachers and people who were around her, who worked with her in the Harlem Community Art Center. These artists went on to have stellar careers. She was around the best. She gave her best. Jacob Lawrence was with her. Charles Alston was the assistant director. Norman Lewis worked with her. Selma Burke worked with her and went on to establish a school in Bucks County. So there was just so many artists who she was around and who she personally helped and guided their careers. And one of the things that I really love about Augusta was her giving spirit and her mentorship, so that she taught the students. And as she became more known, the students that she taught, when the WPA came around, she gave them jobs as teachers. And then she started the Harlem Artists Guild, so that she could then fight for the artists to be put on the WPA programs. As a result of her activism, Charles Alston was the director of the mural project at Harlem Hospital. And you can see these murals right now at Harlem Hospital. They've been restored. There's an Aaron Douglas mural at the YMCA, it needs some restoration. Norman Lewis was the easel director. So people learned, and she mentored them. One of the things that I do find disheartening, and I really don't know the reason, except that maybe because of the times that only one could get through. And I often wonder, although Jacob Lawrence always gives her credit and always talks so lovingly about her, that after the 40s, what happened? And I mean, I know there was a change in, and people were not really doing portraiture or realistic work, and they were going more into abstraction, but you would think that some of them would reach back for her or whatever. So that's a gray area. But as Charlotte said, one of my researchers recently uncovered several letters that she found at Howard University's Spin Gone collection, and these were letters between Elaine Locke and I can't remember the man in Chicago, and also with Mary Brady, who was in charge of the Harmon Foundation. And these letters all were like, yeah, we paid hecklers tonight to heckle her. Like, we have them placed in the audience, everything is set up. And, you know, or they would say, oh, I can't believe they're giving her a reception. They spent $250. So it's obvious that, or this is the proof that people who were in key positions were undermining her. And I think they were just jealous of her because she was way before her time. She was doing things outside the box. And also, she wasn't young. When she came to New York, she already was married twice and had a child. And, you know, you just think about her coming from Green Coast Springs, Florida. She's number 7 of 14 kids, and she's an adult, and she's like, I'm gonna come to New York and I'm gonna be an artist. And she was. So that fortitude really is impressive, and I really love Augusta. Yeah.
Yes. Jeffreen, a lot obviously is known, or at least we know a lot about her work in Harlem and all that she did within the Harlem community. But she also had an impact in Chicago, and she did tour around the country giving speeches talking about the importance of people buying and supporting art created by African Americans.
She did, and this is actually one of my favorite parts of her story that a lot of folks don't know, because so much of it is centered in Harlem or in Paris. And after the Harlem Community Arts Center was open, and also after the World's Fair, she was invited to Chicago to help fundraise for the Southside Community Arts Center. And this is a link that very few people, even in Chicago, know, that she was very instrumental in helping to fundraise for what is now the only existing WPA center that we have. And in the Augusta Savage Renaissance book, I talk about this because I think it's really important for us to see the breadth of who she was, right? So not only as an artist and as an educator, and an activist to be sure, but also a cultural leader trying to connect the dots for many folks to support Black artists. And so while she was in Chicago, she gave a talk. The transcript is actually in the Schomburg Center. And in a way, in a very loving way, but also very direct way, chastised Black folks who had the means to collect and to support artists for not actually doing it. She visited the homes, and this is recounted in a couple of newspaper articles of the time, that she had visited some homes of well-to-do Negro folks, and she was really disappointed not to see art by Black folks on the walls, and kind of questioning why that was. And so this is an important part of leadership that gets kind of ignored, I think, particularly with her. She also, and so to continue kind of, I want to piggyback off of the earlier question in terms of what wasn't included. You know, not only was she someone who traveled and talked to various audiences about supporting Black artists, but she also wrote about it. And I think that's also something that many of us don't know. She was critiquing, she was participating in the discourse around what is Black art? What should Black artists be making? And this is a woman who was an all-around thinker. And it's one of the reasons why I just have this deep love for her and wanting more of her story to be shared, and also as an inspiration for many of us who are working in the field to not just write, but to speak about not just the inequities, but in support of. Artists actually need us to support them and to speak out and to write about it and to lovingly call some of us in to support Black artists and creatives. And so this is one aspect that wasn't included in the film that I would love to see more about, because we are also in a moment where a lot of artists, so when I started the research for the show several years ago, and it's open in 2018, we were in a moment where contemporary art and philanthropy were positioning artists as activists. And while there are some who are definitely activists and using their platform, there wasn't a look back. So Augusta is the blueprint. We've also recently lost Faith Ringgold, right? Another blueprint. And so for me, this is about connecting the dots. And there's a lineage of artists truly being activists and putting themselves on the line, and that was certainly Augusta Savage.
That was also one of the motivations for us to do the film, that in Unladylike 2020, we had profiled many women who were active in the areas of human rights and in indigenous rights, voting rights, suffrage, obviously. But Augusta Savage being kind of one of the first, not the very first probably, but one of the very first Black women to really step forward in an art activist space. So we wanted to talk a little bit about her relationship with this institution, which she was admitted to Cooper Union in 1922. And the name of our production company, Charlotte, is Audacious Women, and we find that there were so many instances when Augusta Savage was audacious. And to me, one of them is the very process through which, with her determination, she did get admitted to Cooper Union. Could one of you share that story?
Well, after the county fair, the superintendent, she won a prize. She won $25, and he told her, come to New York. You should go to New York. And he told her, he gave her a letter of introduction, and she met with, actually, before she came to Cooper, she met with an artist named Salam Bogram, and he did I think he did Mount Rushmore, and he did like Western art, and he was a noted and popular sculptor, but when he realized she didn't have money, he recommended that she come to Cooper. And when she got here and they saw her work, and they saw how advanced she was, I think they said she skipped over 142 applicants, and she also graduated in 3 years instead of 4. So
While working as a laundress.
And with her family here and doing, being a mom and everything else. So she was definitely determined.
I love the way she described in an interview she did with the Federal Arts Commission. She described coming to the admissions office and being told there were all of these women ahead of her and that she was going to have to provide some work samples. And she went to Bloomingdale's to get some modeling clay and made some sculptures and just delivered them, and her work spoke for itself. And that is why she's an alum of 1925. As was also described in the film, Augusta Savage applied for and was awarded a scholarship at the Fontainebleau School of Art in Paris for women, but that opportunity was rescinded when the all-white, all-male American Selection Committee discovered that she was Black. And the principal of Cooper Union provided a letter of recommendation, but it was actually two of her Cooper Union classmates who were from Alabama who were the ones who really raised the protest to say that they did not want to travel with or be in close quarters with a Black person. So can you put this incident in historical context for us in terms of how and why it was such a seminal moment in Augusta Savage basically becoming active in the public space?
Me? Well, thank God she was here, and she did have the support of the Harlem community. And at the time, this was 1923, I believe, you know, the NAACP, the Urban League, the UNIA all had their headquarters here in Harlem. And also the New York Public Library's Negro Division, which is now the Schomburg Center, was a central meeting place and a supporter of artists and writers and learning like we are today. So I think that she had backup. W.E.D. Du Bois was a supporter of hers, and he did also try to get her scholarships. That didn't pan out because, you know, then she didn't have the money. But I think that she had the right people around her and who encouraged, and also it was the New Negro movement. Alain Locke, although we know he was against her in the end, but he was a progenitor of the Harlem Renaissance and the New Negro movement. So people were speaking up and not laying down, and I think that was one of the impetus of her letter writing campaign and her seeking out justice. And also, she didn't want her case to just be the be all and end all. She was the type of person that was like, no, I'm going to speak up because we're going to end this and we want to fight on for the next group that comes so that we could lay a foundation and get this right.
And do you want to add anything?
I mean, the only thing I would add to what Tammi shared is that I believe it was a really important moment in her developing her leadership. There were many folks who were writing about the incident, and W.E.B. Du Bois was a great champion for her, but she also took the onus on herself to tell her story. And this is a period where women are not supposed to be heard, right? So we're talking about the 1920s. And deciding to write and talk about it herself, and I think it was the foundation for all of the things that she built, right? So creating the various spaces for Black artists to have an opportunity for Black youth to get free education, and I think also to create the Salon of Contemporary Negro Art, which was the first commercial gallery for Black artists. Understanding from this incident that while Black artists wanted the same opportunities as white artists, and women wanted the same opportunities as men, that there was still a space needed, a Black space needed for Black artists to be affirmed. And so that's the only thing I would add to that period.
As Charlotte mentioned, part of our art direction and part of our production style is to create something that's fast-paced. It's really interesting, when we were creating Unladylike 2020, we actually met with your two sons, 10 and 8. and asked them, so what would you watch? And they said, well, we play video games. And so we actually kind of created an editing style that was not, obviously not a video game version, but with trying to look at that sort of pacing. So there are quite a few images in the film that we just wanted to slow down and all kind of look at together. So in the film, we do focus on Lift Every Voice and Sing, which is the 16-foot sculpture that Augusta Savage created for the 1939 World's Fair, but which is one of four large-scale monumental works and pieces that she created. But we wanted to look at some of the different ways that Savage expressed her artistic skill. So we're just going to look at a PowerPoint of a couple of her works together.
So the first three are in museum collections around the country. The largest collection of her work is at the Schomburg, and some are in private collections, but then the remaining, starting here, the remaining works are all missing or destroyed. Most of them were in plaster. She rarely had the means to cast them in durable materials like bronze. And so these images or newspaper clippings are all that remain of these gorgeous works. And as Denise Morel, the Metropolitan Museum curator, mentions in the film, she was really one of the first Black women artists to center the Black body and represent Black people in a positive light at a time when most of the artwork was very stereotypical or racist.
And immediately following the Fontainebleau snub, some of her first commissions were from Black organizations. So for example, the bust that we only had the press clips of, the news clips of, the bust she did of Marcus Garvey and W.E.B. Du Bois. But how would you describe Augusta Savage's style across these different formats? We saw some of her work in bronze, some of her work in wood, and also in plaster. What would you say are the consistent features of her work? Jeffreen, you've really studied it.
Yeah, I would, in terms of, the portraiture and the portrait bust and some of the monuments, depicting Black folks more realistically, and with a level of care. When we think about, again, this period where in visual culture, there's a lot of popular images that are derogatory of Black folks, exaggerated features, looking grotesque. Augusta is challenging that and presenting folks as they are through the artist's eye, of course. But I believe, and kind of what Tammi said in the film, she depicted them from a place of love. And I think that with the folks that we can assume or presume that she had a relationship with or a friendship with, there's also this attention to detail of really capturing their personality. One of my favorite portrait busts that she created is of Gwendolyn Knight. And you can tell that this was a portrait made to represent their deep, lifelong friendship and sisterhood. And Jacob Lawrence even says he believes that it was the most realized portrait that Augusta made. And so it's realistic, it is modern, but then we see in Envy more experimentation, kind of earlier on. And so I think while we can say it's realistic, she was an artist, so she was also experimenting with scale, and groupings in terms of the large-scale monuments.
You want to add anything to it?
No.
One of the things that, and Tammi, some of this we've learned from you and the letters and different things you've allowed us to have access to. One of the things that I was really impressed with Augusta Savage was not just that she centered Black life, but also there was no separation in some ways between Augusta and the community. For example, you've told us, Tammi, about how at different points she offered people in the Harlem community the opportunity to get bus made for $100 or $200. There's a story that I love, that she was traveling on a train from New York to Chicago, and there was a woman on the train with a baby, and she reached in her purse and pulled out a bar of soap and basically carved the baby's image into this bar of soap. And the woman later realized this bar of soap was probably valuable and took it to Camille Billups, and then Camille Billups, who was also an artist, made a copy of the soap and had it bronzed, and even with not the original work itself, but a bronze of the bar of soap. It was just amazing the level of detail she got of this baby's face in a bar of soap. And there's also the story that when Augusta was doing the work Lift Every Voice and Sing for the 1939 World's Fair, she had a casting call and had asked specific people to come and pose, and when some of those people didn't show up, she just went out into the streets of Harlem and basically recruited people and told them to come on in. And in fact, her business manager...
Yeah, George Murray, that was James Briggs Murray's father. James Briggs Murray was the founder of the Schomburg's Moving Image and Recorded Sound Division, but his dad was Augusta Savage's business partner, and on that day, he was standing there, the model did not show, and she said, "George, take your shirt off." You'll do. So Mr. Murray's father is the front piece, so like that connection to Harlem and to the Schomburg Center.
So he's the front piece of Lift Every Voice and Sing, holding the music score. And thank goodness he didn't say no.
Can I ask you and Charlotte a question?
Sure.
So out of the entire process of researching and writing and directing the film, what was that aha moment for you in terms of the significance of Augusta's life and work?
I mean, it was, obviously we read about her during the research, but I think for me it was visiting the locations in Harlem, in particular the building where her studio was and where she opened the gallery no longer exists. It's now part of the open plaza on West 125th Street. Where the federal building is, and there's that beautiful mural that you stand in front of. But to realize, like, the first, the first Black woman to open an art gallery in America, and there's not even a plaque to honor that, and the building no longer exists. That was a moment for me.
Yeah, I mean, part of your stand-up that we didn't include in the film, and you said the Apollo is here, other things are here, but the only thing that isn't here is a marker to Augusta. For me, it was actually finding that interview with Jacob Lawrence. And so he says that, again, we had to cut for time, but he says he was 20 years old, and Augusta came to him, and it's time for you to make some money for being an artist. And she took him to the Federal Art Project, to the WPA, to get hired. And they said, we can't hire him, he's underage. He has to be 21. So Jacob Lawrence says, on his 21st birthday, Augusta Savage came to his house and knocked on the door and took him downtown to get hired. And this is when he said he made the tremendous salary of, whatever he said, $23.83 a week. But again, showing that she was not just determined in terms of her own art making, but she was also determined to ensure that the people that she had the opportunity to mentor, her peers also had tremendous opportunities. When an artist of the scale of Jacob Lawrence said, I could have delivered newspapers, I could have worked in a laundry if it had not been for Augusta Savage. That's, I think, what really got me in terms of understanding the immense impact this woman has made on the American art landscape and why it was really important to tell her story.
Can I interject for just a second? Because we've talked a little bit about racism and the sexism that she faced. And we've talked about, Tammi and I have this ongoing conversation about, Black men who were prominent during that period and after being jealous and trying to undermine Augusta Savage, trying to erase her impact. I also think it's as important to talk about some of the Black men who were very supportive of her. Jacob Lawrence is one. We saw that in the film. When you, in the Smithsonian's Archive of American Arts, in his oral history, his oral interview, he talks very lovingly about Augusta Savage. Norman Lewis also talked very lovingly about Augusta Savage. And then Morgan and Marvin Smith, who were the twin photographers, also talked very lovingly about Augusta Savage. And so I think it's important to balance that, and that for them, she was a deeply important person in not just their artistic life, but their life in general. And so I think that's important, and I really actually love the piece, the inclusion of Jacob Lawrence in this, and what he shares in terms of what Augusta shared with him. That also tells you how deep their relationship was. And so I wanted to bring that up.
And I just wanted to add another artist, Brooklyn artist, Ernie Critchlow. We have at the Schomburg Center in our Moving Image and Recorded Sound Division video of a panel discussion from 1986 when we had a show, Augusta Savage and the Art Schools of Harlem. So a lot of the artists were still living, a lot of the teachers were still living, and Ernie Critchlow, Bob Blackburn as well, but Ernie Critchlow tells the story of living in Brooklyn, and he was 17 years old, and Augusta Savage, he read about her winning the award to study in Paris, and although he was an artist, he never really took it seriously. His family would say, oh, what are you doing, doodling again or whatever? So he said he got on a train from Brooklyn, and he came to Harlem, and this was in the 20s, and he said Norman Lewis was standing there. There was a model, and then he said then he's seen his goddess, and that he just could not believe it. And he also said, which was, just shows you the time, that although he was in Brooklyn, he said when he got off the train, he never seen so many Black people in his life. Coming from Brooklyn, he was like, obviously he lived in a cultural place in Brooklyn, and that was his first time in Harlem, so he was like, wow. But he describes, he didn't even know that you could win an award for being an artist, or that, like you could be an artist, and he thought of Augusta Savage as a goddess, and when he saw her, he was just awestruck, so,
And we know she was very outspoken, and she was not shy, and that's how she got so much done. She really got so much done. So just to kind of close out this evening, and again, thank you all so much for being with us. One of the sentiments that we have Lorraine Toussaint, the actress who is the voice of Augusta Savage in the film. We were very grateful to her. We've worked with her before, that she agreed to do it. And it's really, really interesting when we were doing the recording the voiceover with her, when she was reading the kind of that last comment that Augusta was saying that, in fact, she had created nothing really lasting, but her lasting legacy was if one of her students, if one of the young people that she had nurtured did great art. And Lorraine kept saying, but this is so sad. And we were saying, no, it's not. It's really triumphant. But how do you, both of you, you as well, Charlotte, how do you think about that which we have as the end note, the end statement in the film, that supporting the work of others, especially young emerging artists, is what Augusta Savage considered to be her most lasting legacy?
Well, it is. It turned out to be true. She's getting her flowers now, but I feel that there's no artist in the 20th century that has had the impact that she has had on artists. And the artists that she taught are leading figures of the 20th century. I don't know any artist who had the fortitude. I mean, they're doing their work to give to you and to tell you you could do it and bring you along. Most people are individualists, but she really believed in art and nurturing her students, and they went on to great success.
So I believe that me and Charlotte talked about this in terms of that this statement is something to believe in terms of Augusta Savage saying it. And I say that because I think oftentimes we want to connect the dots in such a way to kind of silence what someone is saying, what their greatest impact is. And I think particularly with Augusta Savage saying this rather than gammon or a work of art gives us a sense of who she really was. And so when I think about that statement, to me, it's not sad. The legacy continues. And it's not just about the artwork, it is about all the other things that she created. She was a builder, right? So her being a sculptor is quite poetic when we think about all of the things that she created, even though they may not still exist. And when I also think about that statement, I'm thinking about, I was at a convening a few years ago talking to a group of artists and arts workers, and they were talking about how to archive their art and their movements. And an artist, Shirley Woodson Reed, I don't know if anyone knows Shirley Woodson Reed. Shirley Woodson Reed is an artist in Detroit. She is a peer of Afrocobra. And in this convening, we were, again, like talking about legacy and archiving, and one of the things that she shared was that as she was coming up as an artist and going to museums, she didn't really see herself, and she thought she would be the first to do X, Y, and Z until she learned about Augusta Savage. That is the power of the legacy of Augusta Savage, and doing the work to uplift many of our artists who are not going to get that museum show. And so I think with that, and Shirley Woodson Reed sharing that story tells us what her legacy is about.
It's hard act to follow, but I guess for me, it's a very bittersweet statement. I believe we pulled it from an interview that she did in the mid-30s, so it would have been prior to the World's Fair monument, while the Harlem Community Arts Center was, in full, at its full capacity, not only as a school, but as a place where lectures and exhibitions and political activism was happening and becoming a model for other centers around the country. So I could see why, her dedication to giving back to the community was at the front of her mind. But then to know that her greatest works do end up getting, not being lasting, it's extremely, it's tragic, really, but it shows her humility. At the end of the day, it wasn't about her work necessarily, although she seemed to take great pleasure in it. Like, I'm always struck by how she's always smiling in every photograph and every shot of footage where you see her at work. She's just like glowing with excitement about art making. So yeah.
Is Virginie here in the audience anywhere? Could you stand up, please?
Our editor extraordinaire, a big shout out, Virginie Danglade. She's the one who helped us create this style. Fun ladylike as well.
We can have ideas and, of course, do the research and, of course, write the scripts, but filmmaking is really a collaborative process, and Virginie, we thank you for your hands all over it. So thank you to Cooper Union. We are so grateful to Cooper Union and Cooper Union's commitment to diversity and equity and social justice within the context of what you're doing. And it's apropos, really, to tell this story, to show this story of Augusta Savage, an alum here. So thank you very much for having us. And thank you all for coming. Thank you so much.